In this lesson, I will show you how you can select entire rows and columns, how you can select the entire worksheet, and also how you can describe a selected area by writing it. Being able to write an area is very important, and you will see it much more in the next lessons. You will understand in a moment what I mean when I say write an area. I will start with showing you how you can select entire rows and columns. As I said in the previous lessons, a worksheet consists of rows and columns. The rows are the horizontal areas and the columns are the vertical areas. So I will click on the letter in column D, and just like that, I have selected the whole column. So now column D is selected. I will click on the number in the row 6, and just like that, I selected the whole row. So now row 6 is selected. Keep in mind that this is very different from what I'm going to do now. I will click on cell A5, I will keep the button pressed, and with the mouse button pressed, I will drag my mouse to cell F5 and release the mouse button. Now I have selected only a specific range of cells. By selecting the entire row, I select all cells in the row up to the end of the columns. For example, I will click on the number in row 5. So now I have selected all the cells in that row until the very end. In the same way, by selecting an entire column, I select all its cells up to the end of all rows for this particular column. For example, I will click on the letter in column D. So now I have selected all the cells up to the last one in that column. Now, if I want to select multiple columns, for example, from column B to column F, I will click on column B, hold down the left mouse button, drag my mouse to column F, and release the mouse button, and now I have multiple columns selected. In the same way, I will click on row 3, hold down and drag and select several lines, for example, down to row 7. And here I will release the mouse button. I can also use the Shift and Ctrl keys as I showed you in the previous lesson. I will do a simple click on column B to select it without having anything pressed on the keyboard. Now I will press Shift on the keyboard and hold it down, and I will perform a simple click on column K and release the Shift key from the keyboard. As you can see, all the columns in between are selected. I will now click on row 4. Press Shift on the keyboard, and with Shift pressed, just click on row 13, and all the rows in between are selected. I always release the Shift key after the selection is done, unless I want to select something else using the Shift key. The same logic applies to the Control key. I will click on column B to select it. I will press Control on the keyboard, and I will hold the Control down, and I will now click on column E and release the Control key. As you can see, I have selected those two columns, but not the ones in between. I will press Ctrl again and hold it down on the keyboard, and I will also click on column H. So just like that, I have selected columns that are not next to each other, that they are not adjacent. Be aware that I can continue with selecting other types of areas like rows. I will press Ctrl on the keyboard again, and I will click on row 4. Again, Control and click on row 6, Control and click on row 9, and as you can see, I have selected 3 different columns and 3 different rows at the same time. I will again hold down Control on the keyboard, and I will select the range J11 to L14. And now I will select the individual cells. I will still have the Control key pressed on my keyboard. I will select cells F11 and F13 as well. I will release now the Control key, and as you can see, I can select a very complex range of cells like the one you see here. Of course, once again, to deselect all these cells, I will click anywhere inside the worksheet, and now only this cell is selected. Now let's see how you can select the entire worksheet. The easiest way is to click on the button over here above row 1 and on the left side of column A. I will click on this button, and now the whole worksheet is selected, all the columns, all the rows, all the cells in this worksheet. Another way to do this is to use the Ctrl+A keyboard combination. I will click on cell I1 to deselect the whole worksheet, and I will press the Ctrl+A combination on the keyboard. To be specific, I will press and hold the Control key, and then I will press the A key once and release the Control key, just the Ctrl+A Control key combination. That method also selects all cells, all columns and all rows, but there are some differences from the button I used previously. Notice that cell I1 looks like it's not selected. This is the cell that I had clicked on before selecting the whole worksheet. Even though it doesn't seem selected, it is selected as well. So one difference is that I can see the cell that was selected when I pressed the Ctrl+A key combination. There is one more difference that is even more important. I will click on cell C5. Notice that C5 is part of an area which is a data list. I will press Ctrl+A, and now Ctrl+A selected only the range that contains the data list, the range that this cell was, the data list that this cell was part of. I will now need a second Ctrl+A to select the entire worksheet. Excel generally recognizes an area as a data list when cells with values are surrounded by empty cells. I will click on cell C15 and I will press Ctrl+A. Now the area A15 to F15 is selected. I will press Ctrl+A again for the second time to select the entire worksheet. So Ctrl+A works like that. Now let me show you how you can write an Excel area. This is something very important, as I said at the beginning of the lesson, and you will see why in the next lessons. I will activate the presentation that I have in the taskbar to see how I can write simple cell references. When I want to write the cell A3, I write the column and the row. First the column and then the row. I always write A3. I never write 3A. By default, it is the column first and then the row. So when I write A3, I mean the cell in column A and row 3. If I write B5, C10, D15, I mean 3 individual cells. The whole trick is to separate them with a comma. So now I mean cells B5, C10, and D15. There are 3 independent cells. It's like I have used the Control key to select these 3 cells. Let's see now how I can write a range of cells. I write cell ranges by putting a colon. So when I say A3 colon A10, I mean from A3 to A10. If it was a comma instead of a colon, then I would mean just cell A3 and just cell A10, just the 2 cells. On the other hand, by using the colon, I mean everything in between. In this way, it is a range of continuous cells. I can write cell ranges using both the colon and the comma separator. See here that I have written A5 colon D16, comma F9 colon K18. With this, I mean the range of cells A5 to D16 and the range F9 to K18. If I wanted to select these cells, I would have to select range A5 to D16 first, and then press the Control key on the keyboard and select range F9 to K18. So the comma is for connecting things that are not joint areas, and the colon is for writing a range of continuous cells. These are the 2 things you need to remember to be able to understand exactly what a cell range script means. You might also hear the terms cell reference and range reference. They describe exactly the same thing with the term cell range script I used. Let's see now how I can write an entire column or an entire row. For the column, I write the letter of the column twice with a colon in between. So for column D, I will write D colon D. I'm not saying D1 to D followed by a number for as far as it goes. I say D colon D, and I mean the whole column D. I could also say A colon D. So I would mean columns A, B, C, and D. The area from column A to column D. Similarly, for the rows, I write 4 colon 4, and I mean the entire row 4. I could also say 3 colon 15, and I would mean the area containing the entire rows from 3 to 15. I can also do combinations. Let's say I want the whole column F and the whole column row. As you can see, with a comma, I separate the two regions, so it's the whole column F and the whole column row. Finally, I can make combinations of all these things. Look at the combination B colon B, comma, E3 colon E10, comma, H1, comma, G5, comma, K10. That means the whole column B, the range of cells E3 to E10, and the individual cells H1, G5, and K10. So when describing a region, I use a colon and I write the beginning and the end of the region, and I separate regions or cells with a comma. You can think of the colon as to or until, and the comma as end. So E3 colon E10 comma H1 translates to E3 to E10 and H1. It is important to know how to write these areas, because you will see that later when you use functions, you will need to be able to write the area for which you want to apply the function. It is important to know why there is a colon in some places and why there is a comma in other places. Of course, you will see all this much more at the advanced level series, but you will need them in this series of lessons as well. That's all for this lesson. Thank you for watching.